All right. Hello, everybody. Filtering in a little bit. Great to see you all. Great to see you all again. Some returning faces I see, which is great. They're not faces, but names. We have a great set of panelists today. So we'll give everybody, 30 seconds to file in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Here looks
Oops.
okay.
There we go.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off, and we'll do a little table setting beforehand. And then, hello, Rachel. Good to see you. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. And of course, as you all know, this is another Narratives with Integrity event. I look so forward to these. And this is a really great conversation to go into something that I don't think really gets discussed in a panel-like setting with such great people. So I hope everyone enjoys it. My name is Chris Miano, and I'm the founder of Memory Fox. For those who are returning, of course, welcome back. It's great to see you again. And for those who are here for the first time, we thank you so much for joining us. We try to do this every quarter to try to elevate some voices in the community, but also talk about some things that are kind of tough and kind of need to get talked out a little bit. So we very much appreciate y'all being part of this community. Um, I'd love to see where you all are joining us from. So go ahead and let us know what organization you represent in the chat. I think we're all united here by a common purpose and telling stories ethically. So it's always nice to see kind of who the other community members are and where they're hailing from. Special thanks and gratitude to our esteemed panelists, who I will introduce in a moment, for taking the time to share their insights about addressing power dynamics associated with storytelling. This is, of course, a very challenging topic, timely topic as always. And today we're going to ask them some pretty tough questions. And these questions were, of course, generated by the audience and our community members. So that's all going to help us tell stories more ethically. So thank you, everyone who took the time to submit. We truly, genuinely appreciate it, and I'll try to call you out as we're going. And thank you, finally, of course, to our intrepid marketing director, Carly Euler, who is just fantastic, and we're so lucky to have her and have her put this all together. So this session is being recorded. So if you know anybody who couldn't make it, it will be shareable afterwards. And it will be sent to everyone who registered within 24 hours. So y'all will have a chance to see it. So look out for that email. So first off, we're going to introduce all of today's panelists. So first off, I would like to introduce Rachel D'Souza. She is the founder and chief purpose officer of Gladiator Consulting. My tongue's a little tied today. Rachel continues to build Gladiator Consulting to combine her experience in resource development and organizational culture with her deep personal commitment to centering community and belonging for all those who have been disenfranchised or targeted by institutions, systems, and policies rooted in white supremacy and patriarchy. She will share more about her story today and how it has shaped her career as a gladiator for nonprofits. I like that a lot. Rachel, great to see you again.
Good to see you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Next, we have Allie Levine. She is an attorney and the founder of Levine Legal, which specializes in providing affordable and accessible legal services to small businesses and nonprofits. Before founding Levine Legal, Allie served as an in-house and outside counsel for a number of Connecticut businesses. In those roles, she represented clients in litigation and administrative proceedings related to employment, civil rights, and general liability. Allie is a recurring guest here on our panels. So it's incredible to have a legal professional here to give us advice. So thank you and welcome back, Allie.
Happy to be here as always.
And then last but not least, of course, my dear friend Diana. Diana Farias Heinrich is the CEO and creative director at Haber Marketing. Haber Marketing provides communications, marketing, and storytelling services for nonprofits. Diana and her team take care of telling the world the incredible things their clients are doing and letting them get back to what they do best, changing lives and making the world a better place. Diana is also the creator of the Ethical Nonprofit Summit, which she'll tell you a little bit more at the end of our session today. So that'll be exciting to hear some hot news about it and get all up to date on what's going on. So nice to see you again, Diana, and happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me back.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's get to our first question. Our first question is for Rachel, and this is from Anonymous, so we don't know who sent it, but it's a good one. It can feel awkward and transactional to ask a client if it's okay to use their story in a fundraising campaign. Do you have any tips on how to approach the conversation? And for all these questions, I'll start with you, Rachel, or whoever the first person is, and then we'll open it up afterwards for everyone else to chime in. So, Rachel, take us away.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks for putting me on the spot with this anonymous question. What I will first share is that part of the reason that I feel sort of called to share my perspective here is because I have my own story that I have told before about suffering and surviving a heart attack after my son was born, and having a nonprofit approach me to ask me if they could use my story as part of a fundraising gala they had. They used my story, but they told it through the perspective of my now ex-husband, because he was likely most aligned with the identities of people in the room who they thought might write a check. I went into this experience feeling very sort of generous and hopeful that my story would impact other women. The things that I learned about being, 28-year-old heart attack survivor would have an impact, and I left feeling traumatized and taken advantage of. So when I think about how you approach things, when people decide to be generous with their experiences or generous with what happens to them, that requires some amount of trust, right? That requires some amount of relationship. So it does not make sense, first of all, for in your first meeting with someone to say, and by the way, this might have been the worst thing that's ever happened to you, but would you like to share it with a bunch of strangers, right? There has to be some sort of relationship building, some sort of trust building that happens. And then I also think the nonprofit owes it to whoever decides to share the story, how it's going to be used, who's going to hear it, and work with that person to be able to tell a story that is authentic to the person that the story belongs to, not manipulated in a way that benefits the organization or that is oriented towards the donor. So I think that when you are first able to establish a trusting and reciprocal relationship with someone, when you're able to really in detail sort of explain how the story might be used, why it might be used, what aspects of it want to tell, and that you shape your narrative around what the storyteller is willing to share, that might make it a little bit easier to sort of navigate the experience. I also think that a nonprofit always should have a plan B or plan C, because it may be that in the course of someone deciding to share their story, that it feels uncomfortable, or it is re-traumatizing, or that it opens up unexpected reactions from friends or family or other people. It could put the storyteller in a dangerous situation. I think we also have to be prepared and offer to someone that at any time the answer becomes no, that we respect the no and that we move on to another opportunity. So always staying in right relationship with that person, even if it means that we may have to sort of redirect our actions.
So a big part of what you're saying is a little planning and preparation
Yeah,
beforehand to make
just
sure
just
you're
a
covered
little.
for it.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great place of love to come from to prepare for it.
Mhm.
Any other additions to that? Because I think that's pretty solid. Okay, cool. Cool. Well, the next one is from, let me move this over. The next one is from Kristen, and the topic is making the ask internal culture. And this is for Diana. Our program staff, oh, this is a good one. Our program staff are adamant about not making clients feel pressured or required to let us share their stories, even anonymously or with changed names, to the point that as marketing, we almost have no stories to tell. What advice do you have to help us find a better balance between the departments and mindsets? Since sharing stories is it's how we raise awareness and funds to continue to offer our services at low and no cost. This is a really, really strong question.
I love this question. So first of all, let me say that I hear the frustration in it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of frustration. It is hard to have the pressures as fundraisers and marketers to, produce stories for fundraisers because we all know that stories are, the most compelling way to get people to support your mission through donations and in other ways. So I just want to say I hear you. Um, but here's my advice. So extend an olive branch, you know, acknowledge the reasons why your program staff, are fiercely protecting their clients. That's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. So try and understand why it is. And this comes through, conversation. So, my suggestion is try on the first step of the Equistory framework that I developed, the explore step, where you're talking to program staff about clients before you approach them for the story. And this, to Rachel's point earlier, like how do you build trust? Well, the way that I always build trust with clients, or as I also call them, story owners, is by talking to somebody who knows them best, and learning a little bit about them before I approach them, maybe approaching them together with that program staff member, and so that they can be involved throughout the process. Um, the other thing is to just be very transparent with program staff about how you're planning to use the story, doing that prep work, having your marketing plan in place and sharing that, ahead of time. Or even, if you want to start out from a different direction, maybe it's not someone that's currently in your programs, but somebody who is an alumni that someone at your organization still, has contact with. It's not easy, but if you kind of take a look at this as like a challenge on the way to building a sustainable storytelling culture, if you take the time to build that communication bridge with your program staff, it can have a really big payoff in the long run, because you're not going to keep running into this problem. Everybody's going to be on the same page as to, how, story owners are going to be treated in the storytelling process, making program staff part of that storytelling process. I would often have program staff sit in on the interviews if that's what the clients wanted, so that they could have that extra support person. And I'd love to watch them sometimes because they'd have like little side conversations. And, the program staff would say to them, like, oh, remember you didn't want to talk about this. And they would be like, oh, okay. And then they
Right.
wouldn't tell me all of the things. They had kind of pre-prepared for this together. It became part of something that, they'd do together. And so what I'm saying is, in order to have some, to kind of ease that frustration and really build a storytelling culture that's sustainable, is you've got to have the program staff on your side. And that starts with understanding where they're coming from.
That's interesting. So you're saying almost having like someone who is a advocate for that person present,
Hmm.
who truly appreciates that role and responsibility to give them that trust. That
Exactly.
that's interesting. That's a good one. I don't know if I've heard that one before. I do think I would have. That's really good. Having someone there who is an advocate. That's great. Anything else, Allie, Rachel, anything to add to that? I think that's great advice. Yeah, that's good. And almost there's like a legal aspect to it too. Like they're advocate. They're like there with them. Well, there's a piggyback to that for you, Allie, which is kind of a 2A to this. And this is from Jessica. So how do we encourage our teams to ask for testimony or story at the end of an engagement in an authentic way? I know that's one of the things that we built Memory Fox for, is like to make that easier to be able to pull those in, because you need people out there collecting those stories. So maybe Allie, you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of things. So I won't talk about all of them, but one really important one that actually Rachel mentioned that I want to touch on is timing. And so the question was, how do we encourage teams to ask at the end of the engagement? And my response is don't, right? Wait. when we talk about power dynamics and things like that, it comes off very transactional. And I know coming from a lawyer, this is very rich. We don't want you to be transactional, right?
This is what you're here
But
for. This is what
right? But hey, we gave you services, now give us your story. Well, that feels like you don't own your own story, right? Um, Also, why am I going to want to share with somebody when that is? So I think time has to be your best friend, and it's gonna vary for every organization, right? Let's say maybe you had where you were doing a school supply drive and you wanted to ask a recipient, you might not need as much time. But maybe you're a domestic violence shelter and you helped somebody get a protective order, right? They're going to need more time because also, my favorite topic, consent, right? Can we really call it informed consent if those emotions and that trauma it's not going to allow them to necessarily make that informed and fully understand? You need to give time, right? Because that's our first priority is making sure they are okay. So my answer to that would be to encourage your team to not make that the overall goal, right? You can reach out, but more so maintaining contact. So then when more time has passed, you can make that authentic and honest ask.
Yeah, does the legal profession, or like is there anything out there for when someone sort of takes advantage of an asymmetric power structure? Like, is there a legal recourse?
Yeah.
Is there, you know what I
Yep.
mean? Like,
We
could you
have
get in
a
legal trouble?
We do. We have a lot of fancy terms. Some of them are duress. We think about it a lot when we talk about the older population, right? And I know we often
Mm,
have organizations that are serving, and so that can be really, but it's the same thing. It doesn't have to be just age or condition. It can be life circumstances that affect what we can call capacity. And if you've heard me before, you know I have a favorite phrase, because you can doesn't mean you should. Because legally, that might be okay, right? Let's take my example of the domestic violence victim, right? She agreed to give her story. At law, they say, oh, she signed it, we're great. But ethically, that's not okay, right? And so that's where, but we do have for extreme cases, and we see it a lot, whether it be children or people who might be diminished capacity, but it 100% does raise legal issues and not just, pure ethical ones.
yeah, I think that's such a good part to consider is like these aren't always just ethical questions. They're also legal questions that you really need to protect your organization. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else on that one? Because I think,
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to add
yeah,
to your point, Ali, about the being mindful of the timing. One of the things that I've been harping on lately is building long-term relationships with clients. So they may come to your organization because they were in need of something, but what happens when they move on? Like I often hear this is like, well, if I can't talk to clients like while they're going through the programs or getting the services because they're in crisis mode, well, when am I going to talk to them? And that's where I think there's a big missed opportunity for us, especially in fundraising and marketing, is to be creating those long-term relationships with clients. Because some of the best people that I've worked with that were former clients of an organization, I still know to this day because I spent years talking to them, getting to know them, getting updates on their story and like writing updates about them. And so really like, I mean, we think about that for donors all of the time. We want to build long-term relationships with our donors and keep them coming back. Well, what's the retention rate on clients? Right? Like, are they coming back? Do they feel super
yeah,
connected? Maybe not to just their program staff, but maybe to you as the marketer, or the communications person, or someone else at your organization, right? Are they going to keep coming back? Like, what's going to be their impression of you long term, not just in that time that they were receiving services, but like from here on out?
mhm,
And that just kind of reminds me of what Rachel said at the very beginning about that trust building, right? It's if we're just building trust for a one-time story, that's not trust building, right? That's power dynamics and effective. Like, I need something from you so that I can do this, right? No, we want to go beyond that and really focus on building long-term relationships.
I think the other thing that I would add to what both Ali and Dana have shared is I think it's also important to know from the storyteller's perspective how they want to use their story or what their hopes are in sharing their story. So, for me, um, I had a heart attack after my son was born when I was 28 years old. And my hope was that if I talk about this enough, other women who are my age will understand that, yes, this is in fact something that can happen to you. And here are the things that I did wrong. I drove myself to the hospital. I should have called an ambulance, right? Like there are different things, right? When we ask how people want their story to impact others, that can help us also understand the best ways to be stewards of that story. So we're not only just focused on our objectives, whatever those may be, but that we're also helping somebody who is in partnership with our organization work through something that caused them pain or trauma, and help them experience a level of joy or reciprocity in being able to share their story as well.
I love that word stewardship. I think when thinking about these stories, we're stewards of these stories, not just, you know, whatever, extractors, you know. Wonderful. All right, great. I knew that. I knew that was going to be a good question. That's gets to the heart of a lot of things. All right, on to question number three. This is for Rachel, and it is from Danielle. How can nonprofits avoid perpetuating stereotypes or reinforcing savior narratives in their storytelling?
Yeah. Okay. So I think, first of all, nonprofits have to understand what stereotypes exist or are out there. Like, we need to understand what we're trying to shift in the narrative. I think oftentimes fundraisers or comms teams have used distressing tactics. We need you to give now because this terrible thing is happening. And it is a very imbalanced, sort of one-sided picture, when in reality, the truth of the story is far more complex, may also include happiness and joy and strength. And so I think rather than playing up this, I keep thinking of those. I don't know what animal welfare organization it was, but there's like sad, dirty cats like looking at you,
Yeah,
like, help, I have fleas or whatever, right?
yeah.
Like,
With a sad song in the
it's a sad,
background,
right? Yeah,
and
like Sarah McLachlan's making all
yeah,
of us
Sarah
cry,
McLachlan.
you
Yeah, yeah,
know.
we all remember.
And we believe that that's sort of the best way for us to organize money for our cause. But then you see that donors want to give to success, not distress. And so the community that wants to share our resources is actually saying to us, give us some good news. Like, tell us something good. Tell us something that inspires us, not, shames us into giving, right? Like, and I think when we do that, we're not positioning our donor as a savior, or funder as a savior. They are a partner, right,
Yeah.
in the work. And when we are able to share narratives of strength and joy in our storytelling, that also positions the cause or the story at the heart of what we're doing, in equity and equality as well, because we're not asking for help. We're celebrating strength, we're celebrating resilience, and we're inviting people in to create that for more clients or people that are impacted by our organizations.
Yeah, and I imagine you're not saying like avoid the issue or anything
No.
like that, right? Like there's probably a balance,
Yeah,
you'd
we
say.
hear about like tokenism or poverty porn, or how we use just like these terrible, tragic, like gut-wrenching things. We don't have to do that to organize money. We actually have an opportunity for everyone to feel good, everyone to celebrate the work that an organization is doing, while naming there is still work, while naming there is still progress. And when we progress, we have these milestones of success. Like, that is a much more exciting narrative that doesn't only breed generosity, but upgraded and recurring giving over time. When I can
Mhm.
consistently feel good knowing
Yeah.
the organization has continued to build on the work that it has done.
It has like a motion to it. It has like a
Yes,
motion to it rather than like a static thing.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Very cool. Anyone else with that one? Because I think that's a really important issue, but um, very cool.
Yeah, I I'd like to jump in, just backing off of Rachel, is It's the psychology of it. We don't have to tell tragic stories all the time.
Yeah.
Like I think that the nonprofit, like at least the way that I was brought up as a fundraiser, like not really knowing anything about it, it was like, oh, we'll tell the emotional story. I'm like, well, what does emotional mean? And most of the time, people equate like emotional with tragic, and that does not have to be the case. Like we can tell stories of hope, stories of inspiration, stories of small wins, like very small wins, because one, they're more relatable, but two, if you're keeping people in this like happy, like kind of dopamine thing, right, they're going to give from like a much better place. They're going to come back for that dopamine hit, versus if you're getting people to give because of the tragic story, you're doing it out of shame, out of guilt. That's not a feeling that people want to revisit.
I'm reminded actually, Diana, of the conversation that you and I had where I shared that the nonprofit that told my story at their gala ended the video with the audience believing that I had died. And I was backstage listening to people like
Oh
crying.
my goodness.
They're like many drinks into the gala. I can hear sobbing. My then husband and baby walk out onto the stage and receive the audience. And I can hear it happening. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. And so the dopamine hit did happen after I then, he introduces
And
me.
then you
Oh,
walk
oh,
out.
actually,
No, wait, hold on.
literally, I mean, she survived. Guess what?
Okay.
Like, and then there's $1 million fund a need, and then like Smokey Robinson like kicks off the dance party, and I'm just like,
Oh my
what
goodness.
just
Talk about
happened?
power
This
dynamics.
is a real story, y'all. This is 100% true. And so
Like a
um
movie.
there could have been a dopamine hit that did not require 600 people believing that I died and that this 11-month-old baby on stage is like without a mother, right? But that was what they thought would get the donors to give. And it was very dishonest. And so I think there's also something to be said about the relationship that we cultivate with our donors.
Yeah.
They deserve our authenticity. They deserve our honesty. They deserve to be in right relationship with us as well. And being manipulative with our storytelling does not make us a good partner.
I feel like that would be a good plot for like a Parks and Recreation episode or something where like they screw something up and they do that by mistake. Like, no, they're alive. She's okay. Oh man. That's crazy though. I'm thank you for sharing that. I'm sure everybody is learning a lot from that. Um, well, okay, then on to question number four then. Um, this is one of the from registration. I don't know. So Allie, this is for Allie. Should we compensate people for sharing their stories? How do we balance this with tight organizational budgets? This one comes up a lot. I think it's really interesting.
It does. And I want to say, first of all, it's every organization has to make their own decision. But
Sure.
from what I have seen, it's not very common, right? At least in what I do, I don't see a lot of organizations. Doesn't mean you can't. So I want to give 3 pointers that I give to clients if they are considering that in any source, right? The first is you need to think about who the recipient of those funds is. Depending on what your organization does, if you are dealing with individuals who receive government assistance that's income based, and you are giving them some form of compensation, that could affect their
Mm.
income and their
Mhm.
benefits. So again, it's if you're dealing with those, it doesn't mean you can't, but it's something to consider. The other one is reframe how we're thinking about it. I don't want to think about it as I'm compensating you for your story, right? Because it is your story. I'm compensating you for your time and your effort in,
Right.
right? That's what we have to think of. Because also too, if we say we're compensating for our story, regardless of what our consent says, it kind of implies, right, I can now do what I want with that, or I have it. No, you're sitting down with me or whatever, and that's what it is. And whether that be a gift card, just something small and nominal, which is what I would say is more common, right? Not true, here is a stipend or a check, but hey, here's a Dunkin' Donuts gift card. I'm up in New England, so sorry if you're not a big Dunkin' Donuts fan. I got it. That's
We're in Tim Hortons territory.
okay, okay. So, but you know what I mean? But right, like, and then you're also not worrying about the
Yeah.
income stuff or what's it going to, right? Just the other thing too is it might even be a great chance to partner with a local business, right? Use it to your advantage. Hey,
Yeah.
we're these stories, can you donate or something like that, right? The final one is if you are going to do any form of compensation, whether it's a gift card, make sure it's in writing in your consent and that it's clear. So that way there's no confusion, both on the organization's end and on the person's end. So those are my 3 pointers. Right. Again, it's not common, but you can do it. You just have to take careful consideration before you do.
What about like reimbursing for, say, gas money or, a bus fare or something like that?
So now we're not considered compensation. And so as long as the person, in that case, we have to be able to, they have to submit their expenses because the organization would need to show the actual. And I've actually dealt with this on a real one. We've dealt with it with volunteers, which is a similar thing. It can be very cumbersome to do that. One, because what if they took the bus, right? There's just, so you can, and it's not compensation, you can reimburse, but you then have to do it for the exact amount. And so, right, if you're short staffed, limited, it can become more burdensome, but you can do it.
Have you, Diana or Rachel, have you guys ever encountered this and seen organizations do this?
Yeah. So when I was working in-house, the way that we structured it is we had a formal ambassador program. So, and coming back to like that question earlier about program staff, not being willing to like help with the storytelling process. The first thing that I did is I went to the program staff and I said, what would be most useful to your clients? Like, what is it? Gift cards? Is it a stipend? Is it is it gas money or paying for their Uber, or like what is it that they would find most useful? And even with like gift cards to where? Like, what do they want gift cards for? Like, do they want
Yeah.
gift cards for Sephora or do they want gift cards for the grocery store? Because I worked with teens and they wanted both. Okay. Um, and that was fine because that's what they wanted. So if I would say anything, I would just say like find a way to compensate your clients, whether that's, during the process or after the process is like a thank you. Put this into your budget. Like you do it every year. Set a line item for, storyteller gifts, benefits, whatever it should be legally called. I'll let you ask Allie on that one. But just remember too that this is also going to the power dynamics question of it all. Is that, they are providing a value, they are providing a service for our organization that results in money, in funds for our missions, and when we're in
Right.
house, like our salaries. So we have to like look, don't just hold the bag over here away from them because you might push them over in like their benefit status or whatever, right? Like have these conversations, do the background research.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. And I just, I challenge the budget piece. If we budget for fancy cultivation events for our donor societies, if we budget to have a really nice meal for our board volunteers for every board meeting, then surely we can find,
Yeah.
a few $100 in the budget to compensate another set of volunteers, to Diana's point, who are helping the organization meet its financial targets. And I've seen it done in an opt-in or opt-out way. I've also seen organizations who have said, we can provide this to you. We can retain it for this work here at the organization. We can donate it to another organization of your choosing. And a few times have seen, the storyteller or the client say, actually, I would love for this to go to like my neighbor's organization, or I would love for you to send that to my church. And so it's also an opportunity for them again to like use their story to pay it forward, to have a different impact than what we may think we're getting out of that sort of transactional nature
Mhm.
there.
Nice. Yeah, there's some great comments in the chat as well. It seems like other people have been finding ways to get after it. So I think that's I love when this comes up because I think it is so interesting. Um, and it kind of unbalances the asymmetric power structure a little bit too, which is nice. So all right, cool. Well, on to question number 5, and this is from Isabella for Diana. What strategies can nonprofits implement to ensure the storyteller maintains a sense of agency and control over their narrative after it has been published or shared? This is a good one.
Yeah, this is such a good question.
Yeah.
Start before you publish. Start giving them that
You're
power and
right.
that say before you even publish. From the initial interview of asking questions like, what do you want to make sure people know in this story? What do you want to make sure people um, know about you? What advice would you give to other people going through the same situation? Questions like that. Making sure that you run through stakeholder test questions. Stakeholder tests are just questions that put like having a public story out there into the context of a person's everyday life. So like if you are going to do a series of like, TikToks, like, hey, like what if I don't know, your friends saw this or your kids' friends saw this or whatever the case may be, right? That's a stakeholder text question. I was like, okay, what does it actually mean for something to be public? And then make sure that you're giving them a chance to review whatever it is that you're doing before you publish, whether that's a video, like one of those gala videos that we've all seen, or whether it's, TikToks or, it's just a written appeal, like give them a chance to see what it is that you are doing and ask them if there's anything that they want to add, edit, or delete. And then the last piece, and coming back to the long term relationship building, is like give them contact information. If at some point down the line, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you may or may not have time limits on your story, who do they contact if they need the story taken down? Right? Like if you've done a stakeholder test with them, then they know like once something is out there, it's out there. There's only so much you can take down, right? So knowing what the limitations are, but somebody at your organization's got to be able to do this. I have had to do it before. It's a little bit of digging, especially on the social media route. You can't take back shares, but there's things that you can do. So who do I, if I'm the story owner, who do I get in touch with if I, for whatever reason, need to have my story taken down? And that's a low hanging fruit. Like, with any story owner, that's a low hanging fruit and helps you build that long term relationship with them too.
Well, and maybe asking them their opinion on it more than like the day before the gala. And so
So
they don't
true.
have that like that pressure of like they don't want to upset anything or being very thoughtful. Um Someone raised their hand. I don't even know if we can. Hannah Mass. Well, why don't you drop your question in the chat and then we'll be able to hit it, Hannah. But yeah, like not the day before and they're all stressed.
Mhm.
I think that defeats sort of the purpose. Anybody else have any experience with that at all? I feel like that. I bet in the chat some people have definitely had that experience where the day before, or it's a mistake that people make. So yeah, I think the planning, right? So one of you mentioned the planning is like planning and having a system for this is so important to respect people. Um, all right, on to question number 6, and this is from Barbara, and this is for Allie. What mistakes should we watch out for when actually telling stories?
Yeah. So
The broad question, but I like.
yeah, but I think the overarching theme, and I think we've all hit on it, is don't tell more than you've been given permission to, and don't share in ways you haven't been given permission to. And so similar, right? How Diana was just talking about making sure they understand what's being shared. But a common scenario that I see is, okay, we shared this. Let's say it was a video at the gala. A year has gone past. Marketing is like, hey, we have this great story. Let's repurpose it for this, and looking and making sure, do you actually have the ability to do that? And even if you do, like, should you be going back and getting that? Right. So I think the biggest mistakes are telling more than you should, more than they've granted, because especially a lot of time, right, you have background information, or if you've
Yeah,
really done a good job with that long-term relationship, you should know things or have that trust, but they're not going to be things that make it into what you're sharing, right? So making sure that you're not going over that line or violating that trust that they have in you.
yeah. Diana, Rachel, have you guys run into any circumstances like that? Where like what are the biggest things that you see people kind of violate in terms of ethical storytelling with that? and how they tell the stories. I mean, we talked about not reaching back out, before
Mhm.
something gets repurposed. There's probably some other ones.
I'd probably say is not preparing, skipping over the part about preparing the client to tell their story publicly and the effect that that can have. I've seen people walk off stage in tears after sharing their story in front of a room full of people, not necessarily because of like stage fright, but because they accidentally said more than they were ready to say, even though they were
Ooh.
saying it themselves. Like, and honestly, just not giving yourself enough time to spend with clients that are doing this emotional labor, difficult emotional labor. Even if they have a reason for it, all of those things, you've got to give yourself enough time to really spend with them.
I think one of the stickier places I've seen this now is people who have shared stories about their children. And those children are growing up, are grown, and they don't want things about them on the internet. They don't want things accessible. And the nonprofit didn't build in considerations for what youth consent or not looks like, or at what point in when we say in perpetuity, like what does that mean and who does that impact and do they even consent to that? So really being thoughtful around if we are going to tell stories or share stories that include youth who cannot legally consent for themselves, how do we prepare for the myriad of things that could happen as that child grows up?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great because everything's in perpetuity on the internet now. So it's like one day they're 16 and they're like, I don't want that to be part of my story. Yeah, that's tough. That's just kind of living in modernity a little bit too. But yeah, I think the nonprofit has to make that first, like you guys are saying, like to be proactive about those things. So no, thank you for sharing. Okay, on to question number 7. And this is for Rachel. And this is from Anna. Can you address how consultants can bring this topic up with their clients? That's a good one. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, I mean, first thing, obviously, like we need to know what we're talking about, what the multiple aspects of ethical storytelling looks like. Diana has a convening every year around ethical storytelling that has given me and some of my consulting colleagues new language, new tools. There's like a manifesto, I think, in there. Um, that I can then, as we're working with clients, whether it's in donor communications or, thinking about or conceiving of an event, using storytelling to bring folks along, like we have our own guardrails for what we are willing to support, how we're offering to craft a narrative, and sort of know when we are going to interrupt and be like, hey, like we hear that you think that that's a good idea. And also, like, here are some other considerations. I do think that consultants, especially in this moment where I think there's so much employment transition in the sector that a lot of organizations are filling their gaps with consultants, have a responsibility to uphold an ethical approach to storytelling with organizations who are feeling anxious about organizing money, anxious about keeping their donors, anxious about retaining resources. Um, there has to be a line. There has to be someone that's willing to toe that line, especially when organizations are under pressure to perform or feel nervous they're going to lose funding. And consultants, I think, are sort of one boundary, one opportunity to really push organizations to maintain ethical behavior and practices when they are in these moments of uncertainty.
Have y'all ever run into issues with people pushing back or saying, "Oh, my staff, the executive director, this is too hard," or it's whatever, right? Do you ever get pushback, or is it usually pretty well received?
Um,
All the time.
I
Maybe it's a loaded question. I
I
don't know.
well, here's what I will say. Oftentimes there is like an expectation. Of course, that person's gonna like share their story. Like they've benefited so much. And the question that I have asked, again, based on my own experiences, how would you feel if somebody told a story about the worst day of your life?
Yeah.
And that question about, oh yeah, like that. Okay, we maybe need to rethink this, right? But it's that question, like, how would it feel if this were you? And then stop talking and let them sit in the discomfort of
The
that question.
quiet. That is a good way to put it. Yeah, I always wonder about that. Like, how is it actually received, by the organizations? So, and I would say follow people like Rachel, Diana, and Allie, and they'll steer you right if you're a consultant. I know, Diana, we're going to talk about your conference coming up, and those are the places where I learn, and learn from you guys. Okay, on to the next question. All right. Okay, this is the final question. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so we can really dig into this one. Um, this is for all three of you, of course. So, what is one final thought you'd like to leave our audience with today? So, it can be something we didn't have time to discuss or something you'd like to reiterate. I know that there's only so much time to go through everything, so feel free to kind of expound on things a little because you guys truly are the experts when it comes to this stuff. Let's start with who talked last? Rachel, you talked. We'll start with Diana.
Okay. Here's my final thought for you, which is also the first thought, is that there's always power dynamics in your relationship with the client. And if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, even those of us on this panel, we have more power over the stories than the clients do once it gets to that point of the process and the publishing. So we need to recognize that, and also recognize that if we have that power, then it's up to us to also break it down in whatever ways we can, whether that's taking more time, whether that's having an informed consent process, whether that's making sure that you've given the client plenty of time to review any of that. But there's always power dynamics at work, and sometimes you just have to take a little step back and look at who's holding the power in this situation and how do I break it down and try to make it more equitable.
Love it. Let's go Allie next.
So I think I'll go back to where you actually started, and your first question was about how do we not make it transactional. And so I think just the reminder to put the human back in and remember you're dealing with people, but also, right, like Rachel said, put yourself in their shoes as much as you can. Because a lot of times, right, we get questions of, should I be doing this? Is this the proper procedure, right? We don't have a yes or no because it depends on so much, but sit there and ask yourself, if I was in that person's shoes, would it feel like a power dynamic issue? Would it feel like I was being pressured? And so just remembering to stop and think about that before you go forward, I think is so important.
And Rachel.
Yeah, I think we talked about trust and sort of midterm and long-term trust between the organization and its community. Having policies, I think it's important to assume that something is not going to go the way that you planned, and that you're going to have to use the policies that you create. And when you use them, you might have to update them. So I think having a little grace for the mistakes you're going to make when you try something new or try something different. The other piece that is coming up for me as I'm thinking about this conversation now is being really curious about what connects, what kinds of stories connect with the various humans that might make up your community. I think as philanthropy shifts, as the trust in institution varies, as the algorithm changes, there are going to be different tools and different mediums at our disposal to be in connection with our prospective or current supporters. And so we have to be brave and we have to be courageous and we have to maybe be willing to try. I don't do TikTok, but at some point I'm gonna, right? It's so are there things that look different on TikTok that aren't things that I would have done on Facebook or LinkedIn or these other platforms? And and how are we sort of continuing to interrogate where our stories are, how long our stories are there, what that means in sort of the larger context of our organization, and like having a way to like check ourselves
Mhm.
as we learn and unlearn the practices that are going to help our organizations do what they can do in an ethical way.
So you mentioned policies real quick, and I always think that's how I think is like policies. And so do you recommend that people actually have like almost like an ethical storytelling framework for their organization, I always call it an SOP, although I don't think everybody calls it that, but like a standard operating procedure. Maybe it's the army in me, but
Oh, it's the retail in me that has SOPs.
all right, good. We're aligned. But like some sort of documentation that's like this is the process. These are, have you seen good like best practices with that as people go back to their organizations and maybe consider that for themselves?
I mean, I have to kick it to Diana because she is like the guru in this space.
I would just say, right, if we kind of think back to what we were talking about doing with program staff, I'm like creating an ethical storytelling policy is like, you know, such an easy project to get like cross-functional involvement across your organization if you really want to build that ethical storytelling culture. And if you're someone who like you're kind of a lone wolf at your organization trying to get this ethical storytelling thing going, draft one. Draft one and then, give it to your coworkers, give it to your supervisors. Like, hey, I drafted this thing. I've been thinking about it. What do you think?
Yeah.
And get that conversation going, right? Like, and policy doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to guide you when things happen, right? You can include the compensation piece in there. You can include how to do a stakeholder test in there. I mean, you can include all kinds of things in there that really shapes your storytelling culture.
Strength-based messaging, verbiage, words like,
Hmm.
we say this instead of this. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah, a lot of people need coaching. We're all growing together, and I think there's a beauty in creating that framework for everybody to learn from. So, no, that's wonderful. That's really good. And I think that's a great place to close things up. So, first off, thank you again to our panelists. You guys are wonderful. It's so great to see you again. Personally learned a lot today, of course, and I think everybody would say the same. Um, but real quick, we have a special treat. I would like to turn it over to Diana to share a very exciting event she has coming up. Very perfect for what we were talking about earlier. That we're proud sponsors of course, because we just love what she does, everything about it. It is the Ethical Nonprofit Summit. Diana, take it away.
Ah, yes, Chris. Well, first of all, let me just say, when y'all invited me to this panel, I was so excited. I was like, I get to be on with Allie and Rachel because Allie and Rachel were speakers at the 2025 Ethical Nonprofit Summit, and now we're gearing up for the Ethical Nonprofit Summit in 2026. It is a virtual event, May 6th and 7th. The tickets are going to go on sale in February, on February 11th. Just thank you to Chris, Carly, like your whole team at Memory Fox, because y'all have been supporting this from day one. And so it's really being able to have conversations just like this in a little bit more of a structured way. I love to bring story owners or clients who have told their stories on behalf of nonprofits to share their experience, right? Because if we're talking about power dynamics, we have to include them in the room, right? To learn from them what went well from them and what didn't. And it's just, I'm very proud of the community that we've built around it because this is a movement that we're all a little bit responsible for, but we don't have to do anything by ourselves. And really, this is where you're going to find your people on this ethical storytelling journey.
Where can they check it out and how can they stay, in remembrance of it for when the tickets go
Yes,
on
so
sale?
go to ethicalnonprofitsummit.com. You will land on a page with a button to join the waitlist. So get on that waitlist, and that way you're going to find out when the tickets are going to go on sale and all of that good stuff. So ethicalnonprofitsummit.com.
Yeah, we liked it so much. I mean, we like literally bought some for our customer. Like, we just love what you guys do. We're so proud of you. I know how hard it is to put those things on and how much work goes into it. So just tremendous work and thank you for what you do. because it's very, very helpful. Yes, so definitely check that out, especially but not included, not only if you're a consultant in the space, because you're going to get all the up-to-date information in a very quickly changing environment. So thank you guys so much. So I know I didn't talk about Memory Fox specifically today, but if any of you would like to stick around and learn a little bit more about what we do, Carly, my intrepid marketing director, is going to be doing a short demonstration of how our ethical storytelling tool works. So please do stick around. Finally, and most importantly, I do want to thank you all for your service to your communities, your commitment to making the world a better place. You could spend your energy in a lot of different ways in a lot of different places, but you choose to do it where you do it. And I appreciate that, and I think we all appreciate that. So um, over to you, Carly.
Hey, everybody. I am so happy to be here and share a little bit about Memory Fox with you all today. Thanks, everybody, for coming. The panelists, I mean, fantastic. I feel like I learned so much. I learn a lot at all of these panels, and it's just great because I feel like I get an opportunity to learn from people every quarter, and I'm so glad that all of you that got to come here today also get that opportunity. So we'll continue to keep these on, keep doing these panels. Let me know if you have a specific ethical storytelling topic that you think we should cover at our next panel, which will come up in March, because I'm currently searching for a topic and panelists for that. So stay tuned for that. But what you're here to wrap up with is I'm just going to show you a little bit about how Memory Fox works. I know we get a lot of questions during registration. I'm actually the one that takes in all those registration questions. So I go through those, I check them out, I read them, I organize them. And we do tend to get a lot of questions about Memory Fox during registration. So wanted to give everyone a quick overview if you are willing to stick around. So as you know by now, Memory Fox is the #1 ethical storytelling tool for nonprofits. I always like to start off with this question when I think about how Memory Fox works, and that is, if someone asks you, what is your mission? Can you show them? And my guess is that you can tell them. I bet you can recite your mission, like the back of your hand. You probably have your elevator pitch ready. You probably know, all of the ins and outs of every single program. You could talk about every single uh, person that works there and all the great work they do. But can you really show people what your nonprofit is doing with photos and videos? And really, the question that comes after that is, if you find yourself thinking, well, no, I don't really have a lot of photos and videos at the moment, I want to then ask you what is currently stopping you. So when we talk to nonprofit professionals like you, we find that they are often, hit with one or more of the following pain points. So number one is they think that, collecting content from your community can feel like it's pulling teeth, right? That's something that the panelists talked a little bit about today, about how it can be challenging to find new storytellers and, build that trust and get those new stories. Or maybe you're feeling like organizing content is frustrating or it's time consuming. So maybe you get content from people, but oh gosh, I don't know where the consent is that goes with it, or I'm actually not sure who's in that photo, or if they even know that they're in that photo and if I'm able to use it. So that's, lots of things that can go into play when it comes to keeping content organized, especially in a way where you have consent to use it. It's a huge issue for a lot of nonprofits. Number three is we need a more efficient and modern way to share our story. So, I mean, we all know that the world is living on social media at this point. We're all on our phones, we're on our devices. This is how we're intaking stories, but some nonprofits do find that they are having a challenge keeping up with sharing their story in a more modern way. Or finally, if you're here today, you actually are maybe feeling like number four really resonates with you, which is I struggle with collecting community stories ethically. Everyone that submitted a great question today, I imagine that you feel like this is a little bit of a pain point for you. So I want to say that when it comes to Memory Fox, we actually did build it with those 4 pain points in mind. So it actually comes down to a 3-step process that can be broken down to kind of the step 1 of collecting the stories, step 2 of helping you stay very, very organized with your stories, including that consent that is so important. And step three is we have all these tools that help you share your story in a more compelling way. And we do all of that through an ethical storytelling lens. In fact, by now you know that we are the creators of the Ethical Storytelling Report. I want to first, I want to share this, kind of bust a little myth here. And the question is, the question that we asked in this last year's report was, do you believe stories that are collected and shared ethically will lead to an increase in funds raised at your organization? And we decided we wanted to ask this because we do find that some nonprofits, they wait to adopt ethical storytelling practices because they think, you know, I cannot think that it raises more funds. I think that it'll help me, or that it will actually hinder my fundraising, which will hinder helping my community. And that's a big concern for people. But I want to share today, when we asked this question in last year's report, we actually found that 42% of survey respondents said that they have actually seen ethical storytelling already be an effective form of fundraising for them. And followed up very closely at 37%, a lot of our respondents said, I actually believe that this is absolutely true. I haven't personally done it yet, or I haven't personally had success with ethical storytelling just yet, but I know that this is true. And on the flip side of things, we're only seeing 3% and 2% saying that either they don't believe it will increase the funds raised or that they think their funds raised will remain the same. And then down there at the bottom, there's 17% that said, I'm just not sure at this point. But it's really great to see that the top here, over 70% combined is actually saying that we know ethical storytelling is something that will help my fundraising strategy. So when it comes to Memory Fox specifically, I want to quickly just share kind of how it works. And if you want to follow along, you actually can scan this QR code and follow along on your device. And you can go ahead and submit a photo or a video if you'd like. This is just an example campaign, so this will not go anywhere, will not be publicly shared. It's just so you can understand the storyteller process. But so go ahead and scan that if you'd like. But let me just talk about what your storyteller will experience when you send them a Memory Fox campaign. So this is all going to be customizable for your nonprofit. You can see that our friends here at Kids Health Connections, they let us use this example campaign here. And you can see that they have their logo there at the top. And then they get to write this great welcome page where they say, hey, here are the program stories we're looking for. Here's some quick tips. And here's why we're looking for this story. So that's the first thing your storyteller is going to see. After they get past the welcome page, this is where you're going to show your custom fields. On the custom fields page, you're able to make anything required or optional. So if you have other things besides name or email that you know that you need to have ahead of time when it comes to your storytelling, you can add all of those in. It's fully customizable. When they get past this point, they're going to get to the consent forms. This is obviously a major feature in terms of our ethical storytelling standards that we adhere to. We do want people to make sure that they understand their consent before they even get to the point of sharing their story at all. So this is, again, going to be fully customizable. So you can make sure that your consent form is exactly saying all of the things that you need it to say. So some of the things that Allie shared with us today, right? Like if you are planning to offer compensation, this is where you're going to input that. So people are aware of that before they actually share their story with you. And the great thing about this page, people will not actually be able to move on unless they do click that I agree to terms there at the bottom. So that means that we absolutely know that they do give you their consent, and that is going to be tracked in your story bank for you. Once you get to page 4, this is where the storytelling prompts come into play. So this is where you're going to be able to list exactly the questions, those strength-based prompts of the questions that you're looking for. So people are going to be able to submit a video, photo, or a written testimonial to you based on the questions that you are asking them. Once they choose their prompt, they're going to be met with screen number 5 here, which is where they're going to be able to record a video, take a photo, write a text testimonial, or put an upload in. You'll see that the prompt will remain there at the top, so they will remember exactly what they're looking to answer, and then they're able to go ahead and do that right within Memory Fox. Page 6 is then going to ask for a caption, which is completely optional, and that really is just so if your storyteller wants to add a little bit more context to a photo, perhaps, maybe they want to sign it. Like you see here, this one says, "Thank you so much for making this program available to us." And then they're going to be able to hit that submit button in the top right corner, and they're going to see this little confetti that says, "Hey, thank you so much for sharing your story." And then they'll have the option to go ahead and answer more prompts, or of course, they can just be done. So that would be the storyteller perspective from start to finish. Once your storytellers do go through the process of submitting a video, photo, or written testimonial to you, all of those submissions are going to go to your Memory Fox Story Bank. So in your Memory Fox Story Bank, that's where your nonprofit, where your team is going to have access to all the content, all of those stories that are submitted to you. The really great thing about your story bank is that this is where you can tag your content. So you can be able to say, hey, I want to make sure that this is organized by program. Maybe it's organized by event. Maybe it's organized by department or how you plan to use it. You have lots of ways that you can go ahead and make those tags customizable. Another great thing about your story bank is you have the option to bulk upload all of your existing content. So maybe right now you have stories hanging out in your email, maybe you have stories hanging out on your hard drive, maybe in your Google Drive, maybe in your Dropbox, and everything's maybe just scattered. Well, you can go ahead and upload all of those to your story bank. You can get those organized in there so then your entire team will have access to being able to organize those and to work with them on their own as well. Now moving on, so that's step 2 in terms of organizing. And then when we're
Thank you,
talking,
caregivers, for all the wonderful and hard work you do.
let me pause that. When it comes to our sharing process, we have a lot of ways that we help you share your content in a more compelling way. So, for example, we do have our own video editor where you can go ahead and trim. You can add, where you can add multiple videos together. You can trim videos. You can manage your video. You can rotate your video. There's lots of things that you can do in terms of quickly editing your videos right within the platform. We also have a story builder where you can make shareable web pages. This example here from Center for Caregiver Advancement, you can see this is a series of videos where they put them all on the same web page. And then you can actually take that web page and embed it into your own website, or you can send it out as its own link to a group of people where they can all see those videos at one point. So if they want to click through and learn from a lot of your storytellers, it's a really great way to display several things in one place. And then over here on the far right, you can also see this is an example of our Canva integration. So the really awesome thing about Memory Fox is that we do offer a Canva integration where your photos and videos will automatically go to your Canva account. So you don't have to download, you don't have to upload, you don't have to worry about things being the wrong size or things being a thumbnail or things being rotated. Everything is going to automatically go to your Canva account, which means you can just drag and drop, put it into this nice template that you've already created with your own logo, with your own color, with all of your brand. And that's just going to make it super easy for you to then share that right onto social media. Just want to share, want to wrap up with one really great example, a really timely example as we come to the end of the year of one of our wonderful storytellers at Wreaths Across America. So if you are not aware, Wreaths Across America, the kind of the major event that they hold every year is National Wreath Laying Day. And they do that the first Saturday of every December. And what they do is they mobilize volunteers, thousands and thousands of volunteers across the nation to lay wreaths on the graves of fallen soldiers. And as you can probably imagine, it would be quite impossible for them to have someone on staff to actually be at all of these locations, right? I mean, they simply don't have the manpower or the funds to have a photographer or a videographer be present at every location. So what they use Memory Fox for is they actually send out a link to collect photos and videos from their volunteers um, after or during that day and afterwards. So they let people know ahead of time, hey, while you're doing your service with us, we really do encourage you to take photos and videos. We would love to see your perspective, and we're really looking forward to hearing about your experience. Then they send out this link. You can see here this examples from their wreath day from last year, from 2024. They had over 1,000 people contribute over 8,000 photos and videos, which is really just one phenomenal weekend, really, of just collecting content. And then they're able to use that content all year long for all of their different needs. I mean, Getting an influx of content like that is really life-changing when it comes to a nonprofit needing impact stories. So just a really great example of how they collect from thousands of locations, thousands of volunteers, and it really showcases their one big day of impact. All right, so at this point, you're probably saying, okay, well, I love Memory Fox, but what does it cost? How do I get started? Well, I will say that we now are offering membership options that span the entire gamut of what you might be looking for at your nonprofit. So we have starter accounts that are starting as low as $99 per month, and that would be billed annually. Some of the stuff that's included in your starter account would be 2 admin seats, so you and someone else on your team can go ahead and get some collection campaigns started. You can get 120 submissions and you can upload 360 pieces of content. There's so many things that you can really do to get started with your storytelling with a starter account. So if you are kind of brand new to storytelling or you're ready to get started, like ready to launch it at your nonprofit, that's a great option for you. We also have a growth membership, which is a really great way to kind of continue to grow your storytelling. So maybe you already have some content, maybe you have a ton of ideas already in play in terms of what you're looking to collect and share. This is a great way for you to continue your storytelling and really build on your storytelling. The big difference between starter and growth is going to be that Canva integration. So if that's something you're already using, I highly recommend you get started with our growth account. And then if you are somebody, which if you are at this panel, I believe you probably are somebody that fits into this category. But if you are somebody who deeply, deeply cares about ethical storytelling, about building a culture of storytelling, and about collaborating with storytellers, the Campfire membership is really the best option for you. That is going to start at $449 a month, which is billed again annually. But you're going to have so many admin seats. You're going to have tons of content that you can upload, that you can get submitted. You're going to have that Canva integration. But the really, really great thing is that you're going to have a dedicated customer success manager that is going to be able to work with you one-on-one to get all of those campaigns set up exactly how you need them, to give you great consultation on the best ways to collect and share your stories. And additionally, you're also going to have access to our Campfire community. The Campfire community is a way for you to connect with other Memory Fox storytellers, where you can share ideas, where you can collaborate, where you can learn about different features, where you'll be the first ones to really get the most out of your membership. So if that is something that is really important to you, and again, I do feel like if you are attending this session today, this probably describes you. But I would say that that's a really wonderful place for you to start in terms of your membership. So that's all I wanted to share today. We, of course, would love to have everybody stick around. And really, if you're interested in getting started, let me just grab that link for you really fast. So, because we can actually get you started today. And let me just grab that link for you quickly. And we'll make sure that we get your account set up as soon as possible. But thank you all for coming today. Here's the link to start your membership. But yeah, thank you all for coming today. It was another wonderful Narratives with Integrity panel. Always love doing these, and we'll be ready to get our next panel going in March. Like I said, I hope to see you all there. And we are really looking forward to storytelling with all of you and keeping ethical storytelling on the front lines for everybody here in the nonprofit community. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of your year. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy early Christmas. Happy every holiday. Happy Giving Tuesday. And we will be in touch.